Father. Airden looked up at his father, Ayrton, who was skimming through the glowing blue screen of the holonews reports. He frequented after his days at the Intergalactic Ministry. Yes, son. One of the instructors at the schooling center today used the phrase "never war with Terrans." I've never really heard it before, and they wouldn't elaborate. What exactly do they mean? Ayrton looked at his child, his deep blue scales starting to tinge green as he neared adolescence. Well, sit down. I'll explain as best as I'm able. He set down the holonews, pausing the reports on galactic trade agreements, and looked at his child, tapping his chin. What do you know of the War of Eight Nights? We just learned about it in class. Airden said excitedly, straightening up and doing his best to respond. The humans were attempting to expand into space that, while largely uninhabited, was controlled by our species, the Droxy. After 8 nights of combat, peace accords were drawn, trade agreements were struck, and the first new world of humans, Nova Terra, was established. Airden nodded. Very good. But there's more to that story. And why the common knowledge is that one never gets into conflict with the human race, or as your instructor said, never war with Terrans. And then the story began. It was the 22nd century by human reckoning, and the first FTL drives on Terra, then called Earth, were being developed. Earth scientists had discovered a reasonably inhabitable planet roughly 2 drive jumps, or roughly a week's travel, from Earth, assuming all the drive gear worked correctly. The United Government elected a celebrated armed forces veteran, Alexander Marcus, as the commander of a military dispatch that would make the first attempt to reach the planet. Unlike most galactic species, humans need somewhat specific conditions to inhabit a planet. Yet, they are the most adaptable as long as some baseline conditions are met. I've read about General Marcus. He fought to a standstill with Admiral Rani on the 8th night of the war. Airden was proud of his memory, and Airden was proud of his son. Correct, but this was not the contact that led to the War of 8 Nights. No, the first expedition out to the galactic space for humans occurred nearly 10 years before the war. As you can guess, their drive jumps were successful, and humanity began setting up a military outpost on Untai, which would come to be Nova Terra. A military dispatch was chosen in case of unknown horrors that many worried they would encounter. It's funny how humanity was so ready for combat, so ready to be attacked. You have to wonder if we'd only approached them directly. Anyway, forgive an old man's ramblings. So, Untai, as you might have learned, was a small mining colony. Humans discovered what they thought were ruins and set up their base of operations out of one of our mines. When the mining seasons came again, our people reported what they saw: an unknown species having taken over one of our mining outposts, and we responded with force. His young son looked up eagerly, always so eager to soak up knowledge, hearing a tale for the first time. The humans, armed and prepared for combat, fought valiantly, but numbers were against them, as were supplies. Eventually their lines were broken, prisoners taken, though then Commander Marcus managed to escape. He paused for a moment. One thing you must understand about humans is how much their influence has changed the face of how everything in the galaxy works. Before them, a defeated military leader would be debriefed, and then, in the case of our people, given the chance to honorably end his own life for his failure. It seems somewhat barbaric now, but that was how things were done. So when prisoners were taken and their commander escaped, we never expected what came next. It was almost 10 years later. We never saw it coming. A stellar-class warp gate opened up right on top of the planet, and what wound up being nearly the entire planetary armada of Earth descended on a small mining planet. We hadn't even considered putting up any defenses there. Why would a defeated people return to a place where they had been disgraced? It was swift and brutal, and the planet was taken before they could even send a message to the homeworld. When a message did come, it was from a diplomat representing Earth who offered the prisoners they had taken from their attack of Untai for the prisoners taken a decade previous. When we attacked their outpost, it was a baffling request: prisoners used as bargaining chips. It seemed so base. So our people responded with an attack on the assigned time and place, destroying both our own people, as well as the few humans that had been there to facilitate the exchange. And that moment, that is what started the War of 8 Nights. Our people and the people we had warred against. We had a way of doing things. Things by proxy, wars waged over decades piece by piece. Specific people specifically chosen to be our warriors. The homeworlds were too valuable, too sacred to each people to risk engaging. The scale of such a conflict, it wasn't something anyone thought was worth it for any cause. So when the humans left through another warp gate, we assumed. They simply left. They'd made their case, their attempt, and had seen we were not willing to capitulate such a silly thing as a prisoner exchange. It was almost an hour later when the gate opened again, this time directly over our homeworld. The entirety of the human armada rained down on us, massive battlecruisers and smaller fighters, ground transports dropped and their troops soon filled the streets, capturing many points of political and cultural importance, but with a minimal loss of life, as if they were purposefully killing as few of us as possible, something we found incredibly strange. Their savagery and primal rage was a thing to behold, so they say, yet it was the primal rage of a calculating predator, a hunter who was unstoppable, but with a goal in mind. Reinforcements came, but the humans had set up choke points in the skies, making it nearly impossible for them to reach the surface. After 8 days of fighting and thunder in the skies, our leaders finally surrendered, preparing to die at the hands of their captors. But the representative humanity sent was the last person any of us imagined. It was Alexander Marcus, not dead or disgraced, but promoted to general, the highest rank in their army. His experience against us, he said, had made him the obvious choice for leading the strike. Rather than slay our leaders, the peace accords were made, and Untai was rechristened as Nova Terra, the new outworld home for humanity, and the starting point of their expansion. He finished his lesson, leaning forward to make sure his young son had his full attention. We became allies with the humans not long after that, only 20 standard years passing, before nearly all hostilities between our peoples were buried. There have been several more wars since then, and each time humanity met their enemies with the full might of their force. They are slow to anger and quick to forgive, but they are a force to behold. Each attack on even the most remote outpost was met with the full military might of their growing and expanding civilization. They are, as one of their great leaders said in the ages, before they even walked on their first moon, a sleeping giant capable of great resolve. So, Erdem, when people say not to war with Terrans, it is for this reason. No matter how small the slight, no matter how petty the attack, if enough provocation is given, no force will withstand what humanity will respond with. Even those that have defeated Terrans in individual battles lost so many and so much that it could scarcely be called victory, and even then more humans would come to continue the fight. Every war is fought with their complete dedication, no skirmish is too small for their attention. Don't war with Terrans, because they will not stop, they will never stop, until victory is claimed, even when any other race would long have admitted defeat. It may take decades of waiting, but Terrans will never allow a defeat to go unanswered. Don't war with Terrans, my child, because victory is never worth the cost. Author's name and the link to original text in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video. And please join our channel.